that's a big one. That's a big fish. Oh God, that's a big fish. Oh, that's a freaking tank. That is a freaking tank. Boom. Look at that. Heck yeah. Yes. It's about a 7-pounder. That is a beauty. Beautiful fish. Heck yeah. What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the Monster Bass channel. Today we're talking about throwing some big worms. We're going to talk about straight tail, we're going to talk about ribbon tail, a little bit of how I rig both of them, how I fish both of them. They are similar but a little bit different. Let's break it down. What's happening, guys? My name is Jeremy Francis. I run the channel and the page called Fishing the Lonestar. Would love for you to come over there and give me a follow, give me a subscribe, whatever it is that you do on the social media platform that you do. But today we're on the Monster Bass channel and we're talking about throwing big worms. Now, before I get into some on the water footage, I do want to talk about a little bit of how I rig these, the weight, the hooks, the line, a little bit of the rod and reel setup, just so we get that out of the way. But it's important to talk about that because that's what tees up success. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the straight tail, shaky head. Now, these are big, kind of what someone call magnum worms or oversized worms. And we're going to talk about the gear because the gear is a little bit different. These are big hooks, big weights, because we're fishing a little bit deeper in the summer months. So I'm first going to talk about the Texas rig and what I'm using here. We'll talk about kind of deeper water on lakes. I will give you a couple of tips for some pond fishing as well, and then we'll switch over to the shaky head. So first on the Texas rig, this is an 11-inch floating worm or standing worm from Egg Zone Lures. So what that means, when it hits the bottom, this tail is going to stand up, all right? So there's no salt in this plastic, and that's going to be true for the shaky head worm that I'll show you in a minute as well. Now, what I am rigging that on is a Monster Bass 3/8 ounce tungsten. Now, I'm throwing that on a 5/0 EWG hook. This is a katana hook. They're super sharp, but this big gap and the length of the hook allows for a really good hookup ratio. Now, one concern people have with a big worm like this is, are bass going to short strike it and bite it and not get the hook? I'll be honest with you, that rarely happens. The way bass eat when they open their mouth is they actually inhale. So this entire worm is actually gonna go backwards into their mouth and they're gonna get that hook. If you're finding short strikes or you're getting bit but not catching fish, it's likely because there's a bluegill that's biting just that little tip or just the little end of the worm there, all right? So if that happens, don't worry, just find somewhere else to throw because there's likely bluegill pecking at your worm when you want an actual bass to come eat this whole thing. Now, if I'm fishing in a pond or if I'm fishing around grass, I will sub that 3/8 ounce weight for a 1/4 ounce weight. It's gonna allow me just to come through grass a little bit easier, lift and come out without getting stuck. But most of the time I'm throwing this around standing timber on big bodies of water or lakes, ponds, etc. And that's where this worm really excels. Now, let's talk about the straight tail worm for a minute, all right? Now, this is the Magnum Crawler from Smash Tech Lures, all right? And I usually throw a couple different colors. We'll come to colors in a minute, but this is a big 7/0 shaky head hook. It's a 3/8 ounce. Actually, I think this is a 1/2 ounce. Also, this one actually is by Strike King, but this worm also has no salt and it will stand up just like this. So oftentimes, whether I'm fishing this one or the big ribbon tail, I'm actually not moving either of these very much. Now, the beauty of the ribbon tail is you can't actually hop it, swim it, and this tail is gonna give you a lot of action. You're not gonna get as much action out of this worm other than the fact that it's going to stand up and have some subtle movement. That being said, I have caught some absolute tanks on this worm and the blitz worm, so both of them provide excellent results when you're out fishing in deeper water or around standing timber. All right, let's talk about the colors because this is pretty much true for both worms. I like to throw some version of a red plum, red bug, somewhere like that in the very hot sunny months. This worm gets bit a lot, the plum color, and you'll see that there in the Egg Zone color as well, a little bit of a different plum, but both those are considered to be kind of like a plum color with a little bit of blue flake. When the sun is also out, but I want some red flake, I will go to kind of that California 420 or a little bit of that watermelon red flake. This does really well on clearer water. So if I have really clear water, I'm gonna go to that watermelon red, and certainly when the sun is out. If it is a cloudy day though, I'm gonna go more towards like a June bug, some sort of like black and blue. This particular color from Smash Tech is actually called June bug red. So it's got a little bit of a red and green flake in it. But that June bug color does really well on the cloudier days. All right, and last but certainly not least is the setup that I'm using, mainly the line, all right? The line is a 20-pound fluorocarbon. This just happens to be the 20-pound fluoro by Vicious Fishing, their Pro Elite fluorocarbon. But 20-pound fluorocarbon is very important to throw because you're throwing heavy weights, you're throwing big lures, and you're looking for big fish. You definitely do not want to break off. So 20-pound fluorocarbon is what I go with. Even on clear bodies of water, fluorocarbon is nearly invisible underwater. These fish are not shy to the line, and if they were, they probably wouldn't come up and eat a big weight and a big hook and a big worm like this. So don't worry about the 20-pound fluorocarbon. If you are concerned about it though, go to 17-pound fluorocarbon if that makes you feel better, but I recommend 20-pound fluorocarbon. I throw this on the Custom Pro Lose reel. I love this reel. In your particular reel, what I would recommend though is just a 7.5 gear ratio or higher. That's just gonna allow you to pick up line because you're fishing slow, you're fishing deep, and you wanna be able to get a big hook set and get that fish to the boat as quickly as you can. So 7.5 gear ratio or faster is what you're gonna want. And in terms of the rod, I throw mine on anywhere between a 7.3 to a 7.6 medium heavy rod, somewhere in there, and a fast action. Again, you got a big hook set, you want a rod that's got some backbone to it, so an extra heavy to a heavy. Fast action is what you're going to want here to get that fish hooked and get it to the boat. Because keep in mind, you got to drive in that big hook either way. For this or for this, you have a heavy gauge hook that you need to get set, and you need a heavy duty rod or extra heavy, sorry, maybe not extra heavy, medium heavy or heavy rod to be sure to get that hook set in the fish's mouth so you don't miss them. Now, I'll show you some on the water footage here, but one of the most important things I can say is this is a slow fishing technique, but it is a big fish technique. The main thing you need to consider here is you are not moving the lure with the reel. You are only picking up slack with the reel. So what that looks like, kind of toss this off the boat here, is I'm going to point my rod right at my bait, right? And I'm just gonna lift it straight up to about the 12 o'clock position. And when I get to there, I'm then gonna point my rod back down to the water, reel on my slack, and I'm gonna lift and pull again. So I'll show you again what that looks like here, all right? So let me cast out. I'm gonna let that lure and that worm sink to the bottom. I'm gonna point my rod right at it, all right, and I'm gonna just drag. You notice my hand's not even on the reel. I'm dragging, I'm feeling that worm come across the bottom. Now you can use this for rocks or timber. Now once I get to the 12 o'clock position, as I point my rod back down, I'm reeling in my slack until my line is tight or taut again. All right, so when the line is tight again, then I'm gonna lift and drag again, just slowly bringing that worm across the bottom. Right now I'm coming across rocks. I can feel every single one of them. Get to the 12 o'clock position, and I'm gonna point my rod back down. That is literally about the speed that you want to throw this worm and retrieve this worm. Now, if you are finding that you're not getting much bites, slow down. I mean, literally go tick, 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 almost like it's the second on a clock, and you're moving it barely once per second, all right? Maybe you need to go slower than that, maybe down to like 2 or 3 lifts, 2 or 3 seconds in between lifting. But that type of movement is what you need for this worm on bottom. And keep in mind, as it's coming across bottom, it is standing up and floating. I can't stress enough, whether you're using the Blitz worm or the Magnum crawler from Smash Tech, the important thing is you're using a worm that has no salt, and you're using a worm that is actually going to stand up like this on the bottom. That is the most important thing I can stress. It is going to get you more bites. It's something that fish don't see often. It's worth it to throw a lure and a worm that does not have salt and is going to stand up on bottom. You're going to get more bites that way. Yes, sir. Heck yeah. Yes, yes, baby, look at that. That worked just like it should. All right, guys, one of my favorite techniques to throw to get big fish and big bites in the summer months and the hot months is definitely going to be a big ribbon tail worm or a straight tail worm. Make sure you're stepping up your gear, make sure you're stepping up your rod. You need to throw heavier line, heavier weights, heavier hooks, and a heavier rod, but you're also gonna catch some heavier fish. This is an awesome technique, but make sure you're using the right equipment, you're using the right retrieval, and I promise you it's gonna yield some results for you. Drop me a comment below, let me know if there's something else you would add to this particular technique, or if there's other gear that you particularly use, maybe even a different worm that I've mentioned. We'd love to hear it. Drop me a comment, I read them all and come back and check them. Make sure you subscribe right here to the Monster Bass channel. Go out there and catch a monster bass.